Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation. It is an absolute doozy. This is one that we're going to be unpacking over the next few weeks to months to develop some tangible tools and guides on how we can implement this groundbreaking research into your fasting lifestyle. So we are going to nerd out a little bit, but most importantly, we're going to explain it in a way that allows you to identify and then take action based on where you are in your fasting lifestyle journey. Ultimately, if you're new to the podcast, you're here probably because you want to lose some weight, get healthy once and for all, get off that diet roller coaster. So welcome in. We are so happy you're here with us. If you want to know more about Tommy's journey, my journey, why we do what we do week in and week out, head back to episode 0 and episode 1. Give it a quick listen. That'll give you some insights into how fasting transformed our lives and now why we just passed 300 episodes, nearing 5 million downloads.
Yeah, wow.
And just so grateful for all the long-term listeners with the shares and the questions and the feedback. But why we have our challenges, why we have our coaching, why we have our resources, and why we do this week in and week out is because we want to help you with some of the same similar stuff that we were going through. So today, we are going to dive into some groundbreaking research, Tommy. But before we do that, we want to give a shout out to a comment that was left on episode 295. It was one of our most, typically one of our most listened to episodes when we do our listener Q&As.
Yeah.
And this was left by Allison 6 days ago. So we want to give you a shout out, Allison, because you took the time to say some really nice things. So thank you so much.
Heck yeah, over on Spotify too. I definitely give this podcast 5 stars. Really enjoy all of the info from Dr. Scott and Tommy that they provide in every episode. So I'm thrilled to recommend this podcast, and I appreciate you. Keep up the great work. So thank you so much, Allison. You keep up the great work too, and just taking a few minutes. I know you didn't have to do that, so we absolutely do appreciate that. And it's really cool whenever you're finding some success to inspire others too. So that's part of the magic that happens whenever you do leave a review. So we absolutely appreciate that. So let us know what we can do to help you.
And Tommy, I do want to give this shout out because we talked about it. She put it in the post. So in real time, I'm actually going to make a pivot here.
Okay.
For anyone that's had bariatric surgery, she's got some really great resources. The Regain Remedy is the book that she wrote.
Yeah.
And it's specifically for post-bariatric patients. Now, we have some of those folks in our coaching group as well, but knowledge is power. So I'd say check her out, reach out, more knowledge, more resources, the better. So, Allison, I really just appreciate you taking the time to listen and give us the 5 stars and leave the review. So, little reciprocity there. If you're a post-bariatric patient suffering with that regain, which surgery or not, that's something that is very rampant in the dieting weight loss world, as we know by the statistics. So,
in my family, I watched that regain post-bariatric surgery too. It's tough and it's very real.
So the author of the Regain Remedy. As we get into today, Tommy, it's gonna be a little nerdy to start, but then we're gonna give you some clear buckets and action steps based off of this new groundbreaking research. So Tommy, let's get into it. First and foremost, I want to give a shout out to one of the people that I follow for updated, real-time, real-life, deep dive research, just really groundbreaking, cutting-edge stuff on the forefront of the newest research that's coming out in the insulin resistance, metabolic science world. So this is a shout-out to Nick Norwitz. He's an MD, PhD, and the email that I received from him is where we came across this article. And he says in the beginning, he goes, I'm releasing this letter early because the data it covers was conducted by one of his scientific heroes, Stanford's Professor Michael Snyder.
Hmm.
And the article itself is in the Nature Biomedical Engineering journal. And it was accepted in November of 2024. The prediction of metabolic subphenotypes of type 2 diabetes via continuous glucose monitoring and machine learning. So what the heck does that mean? And I was trying to think of a way to explain this, but Nick really does a great job. So I just want to give him a shout out. And Professor Michael Snyder was just on Huberman's podcast as well.
Wow.
So, like, we're talking about some of the industry titans in terms of being at the forefront of metabolic health and research, right?
Yeah.
So when we're looking here, the way he explains this is just beautiful. And he calls it type 2 diabetes, metabolic pizzas and salads. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take these phenotypes, these subtypes of diabetes, because now we're showing that there are 4 subcategories. And then we're going to categorize them for you to be able to self-identify on what category you fit into, and then give you a fasting, lifestyle, and nutrition action step that fits that where you are in this blood sugar metabolic syndrome progression that leads to all of the chronic health conditions, cardiovascular disease, et cetera, that we see that's rampant here in the US and now worldwide.
Yeah. So what this means is not that you have to have diabetes, right?
Right.
But that any blood sugar related issues that you have as an individual are going along one of these 4 pathways, essentially.
Yep.
And then to be able to identify that means that you can pull the right levers that you need to do to prevent further progression, and then reverse that progression too before it ever becomes full blown diabetes if you don't have it.
Yeah, and some of the things you see are going to be in your standard routine yearly blood work, right? With your A1Cs and your liver enzymes and your fasting blood sugar, your plasma glucose, when you fast overnight and then you get the blood work done the next day. So some of the stuff you're going to have to you're going to be able to look and be like, oh, that's me. And we see this in our coaching. And, when we have different clients come in, depending on where they are and how much weight they have to lose and what they've been doing, low carb plus fasting, or they're more carnivore, or they're more sedentary, or they're more active, the 4 to 5 workout a week type people, the boot camp type folks, cardio is king or queen type people. Like we always inside of coaching have been able to like coach them through pulling some different levers on, hey, do this for a month, do this for a month, add in some carbohydrates a couple times a week. How's your sleep? How's your stress? How's your energy? How's your hunger? How's your fatigue? How's your brain fog? So it's been very customized on what we've been doing. But what I realized in looking at these subgroups is these are the different things that we see that people struggle with on their weight loss and fasting journeys. So if we can identify them, you now have levers you can pull that will that'll make the journey easier, or at least make the journey make more sense on knowing what you should be doing in real time. So that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on, is the ungoogleableness of the coaching, is that, hey, where are you at? How do we customize it? How do we personalize it? How do we track the results? How do we interpret the results? And then ultimately, what's your long-term strategy for sustainability? Because we always say begin with the end in mind. So I'm glad you interjected there to kind of put that framework on what we're doing in the hope and the application of this conversation today. And we're going to be developing some resources specifically on the identification and the follow-through on this. So stay tuned. We're going to have a couple of announcements on this coming in the near future as well.
Yeah.
But to Nick's urgency on putting this out, our urgency was, we got to get this out there and then we'll build the thing, right? So we want to start that conversation today. It's very timely. Professor Michael Snyder from Stanford was on Huberman. So listen to the episode, going to go do a deep dive into it here in the next couple of weeks. But big picture here, I want to set the stage. And Nick, the way Nick explains this is beautiful. So he says, for decades, medicine has categorized type 2 diabetes as a single disease. So he outlines this section of the blog or the Substack as metabolic pizzas and salads. So the subtypes of diabetes could pave a path for better care. I'm just going to come out and say will pave a path for better care.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So type 2 diabetes, often associated with obesity and adult onset. It used to be called adult onset diabetes, right? isn't one disease. What we're showing in this groundbreaking research is actually 4 different underlying pathologies showing up in different proportions in population, in different people. So here's the analogy that he used that I think is beautiful. Imagine a dish made from bread, vegetables, and cheese.
Okay.
The general ingredients stay the same, but their ratios define what you're eating.
True.
So here's the example. Pile on the vegetables, go easy on the bread, toss in some protein, and you've got a Caesar salad with croutons.
Yep.
Okay? So that's type 2 diabetes B. Flip the script, make the bread the base, add a smear of sauce and some melted cheese, and now you've got pizza.
Yeah. Very different.
So
same ingredients.
imagine, right? Imagine if we call both dishes the same thing. A salad is a pizza and a pizza is a salad. Some of you go, and that sounds great.
Right.
Right? Now I get my pizza and I can call it a salad. Okay? Yeah. But that's what we're doing with type 2 diabetes. So we're going to look at the hidden signals in our blood sugar. Then we're going to look at the 4 distinct metabolic drivers, the mechanisms or the recipes behind your metabolic pizza or your metabolic salad. And then we're going to look at the action steps on what we can do. And now with the wonders of CGMs and finger pricks at home, blood sugar monitors and ketone monitors, you can actually do this test at home and get some really insightful data. But we're going to give you the subjective stuff too, meaning how do you fit or how do you figure out which bucket you fall into? So, Tommy, we got a heavy lift today. So I want to make sure that we're going to go through kind of the different 4 subgroups. Then we're going to talk about the mechanism. Then we're going to talk about the fasting lever, the nutrition lever, and the lifestyle lever in terms of sleep, stress, exercise, activity, etc.
Okay.
4 diseases under 1 label.
Okay.
The 4 main drivers of type 2 diabetes. Why does this matter? Hormones drive caloric output and input based on hunger. So it's not just calories in, calories out. There are metabolic undertones depending on where you are on your weight loss journey, your hormone profile, your age, your activity level, your genetic predisposition, etc. So the 4 main drivers, right, these 4 subcategories are going to be muscle insulin resistance, beta cell dysfunction, impaired incretin effect, and liver glucose dysregulation.
Okay.
So 1 disease, 4 paths. So if you go out there and you Google, what's the best way to lose weight? Right? Many of our people that come to us are going to say, oh, I'm going to lower carbs and move more, or eat less, move more. But knowing these 4 subtypes and the mechanisms, we're going to be able to personalize the recommendations based on this groundbreaking study and the new machine learning tools. I've thought of a few different ways of how we're going to get into this. First of all, I want to talk about the evidence, the mechanistic evidence, and then the recommended interventions. So when we're looking at the muscle insulin resistance, now this was me. And we'll talk about percentages on kind of the population here as well. This was me. And then I also was in the liver glucose dysregulation group.
Yes. I'm going to put myself in both of those categories as well.
Yep. So when we're looking at the overall kind of category or the overall explanation here, we're going to look at the mechanism, then we're going to talk about the application. So the muscle insulin resistance, what is happening? It's the failure of your skeletal muscle to dispose of glucose in response to insulin. So that means your body isn't using the energy efficiently, getting it out of your bloodstream and putting it into your skeletal muscle. Your skeletal muscle, your mitochondria, is the main user or the main driver of removing that blood sugar from the bloodstream and using it and turning it into energy.
Yeah, kind of mopping up the overflow too.
Yep. The beta cell dysfunction group, this is going to be the pancreatic beta cells. So the cells in your pancreas that produce insulin. In this group, your beta cells failed to secrete adequate insulin for demand. So you're not going to be able to handle the breakdown of the energy from the food that's now floating around in your bloodstream.
Yeah, which means blood sugar starts to rise, starts to creep up because insulin's not proportionally coming up with it because the beta cells are failing to sense and or produce and output the insulin needed to combat the blood sugar response.
100%. So when we're looking at the third group, this is going to be the impaired incretin effect.
Okay.
So this is going to kind of go side by side with this new giant movement of GLPs, GIPs, glucagon, the Wegovy's, the Ozempics, the retatrutides, all of these new medications that are using off-label for weight loss, right? They are FDA approved for the use for diabetes. But you're going to see here that if you have an impaired incretin effect, this is going to cause this group of people not to respond to those weight loss drugs. Because in this case, when you don't have this incretin working properly, you're going to end up having a reduced post-meal GLP, GIP response. So your insulin spike is pretty much going to, insulin sensitivity is going to be defective. And then the fourth group, I know it's a little nerdy right now, but we're going to get to the good stuff. The liver glucose dysregulation, failure of liver to suppress glucose production post-meal. This is where you're going to see your liver enzymes on your labs kind of tick up a little bit, and you're going to be like, what the heck's going on here? And this was me, you know, I could start working out and lifting weight and I would grow and I would swell up like a tick because my fasting insulin was high. So when we talk about insulin resistance as one of the main drivers of metabolic dysfunction and blood sugar dysregulation and weight gain over time, or the inability to lose and keep the weight off, this is where I was. I was doing all of the things, the eat less, move more, low carb, IF, and my body just wasn't responding because of these underlying mechanisms. So over the years, I've kind of figured out, okay, what's my fasting schedule? What's my food choices? What's my lifestyle? What's my workouts look like? Do I need to prioritize sleep? We've kind of been able to put the puzzle together in me being able to get long-term sustainable results, decrease that visceral adiposity. So right now, if you're just looking at these four groups, muscle insulin resistance, beta cell dysfunction, impaired incretin effect, and liver glucose dysregulation. That's the nerdy part.
So it's literally the base of these blood sugar related issues, diabetes, pre-diabetes, or pre-diabetes, just on the blood sugar dysregulation part, or like the weight loss resistance part. You know, would used to be looked at as one continual track, but to look at this as having four distinct different starting points within the body, within the physiology, even within the anatomy here, between muscle or pancreas or the GI tract or the liver is, I mean, this is huge, because then this will later dictate and start to explain some of the differences that we would see in different sorts of tests, in blood work, in like a mixture of, hey, this is what I'm looking at now. These are the things that are elevated or off right now, and these are the symptoms, and this is how I respond. Why is that? Well, to differentiate between these different buckets is big, because then basically it's like a very blunt tool to start fixing these things starts to become a much more precise surgical tool to get at the underlying issues.
So when we're looking at these four groups, the muscle insulin resistance, beta cell dysfunction, impaired incretin response, and liver glucose dysregulation, the original research did an OGTT test, an oral glucose tolerance test, where you have to drink the 75-gram glucose sludge, right, the drink, and then they monitored their blood sugar. And what they found was that if you look at the shape of the graphs, it was really, this is where they figured out that each one of these four subgroups had a different time-based blood sugar response and what we call area under the curve. Yeah. So how long was that blood sugar staying elevated, and what was the effect on insulin? And one of the interesting things is that when they did this, they found that when we look at A1C, A1C really tells you almost nothing about a person's underlying insulin resistance and what bucket you fall into.
Right, it's just average blood sugar over 90 days. That's it.
Yeah, because looking at some of these subgroups, they had a normal A1C but insulin resistance. They had a pre-diabetic A1C but insulin sensitive, and then they had a full-blown diabetic but has better insulin resistance than the normal A1C group. So it's like, yeah, A1C is great, but is that really moving the needle on the recommendations on how you reverse, prevent, or
No.
ultimately?
Just a very blunt object.
Yeah, it's
Have
not
you had elevated blood sugar or not?
It's not it's how do I say this? It's a good metric to know because it helps in the interpretation of, but it doesn't really tell you anything about your metabolic function or what the driving mechanism beneath that is. So when we look at this, what are the key environmental lifestyle factors that lead you to be in one of these groups? This is where we're going to start talking about the personalization or the customization. So we're going to look at key environmental lifestyle factors and then epigenetic mechanisms. We'll keep the epigenetic mechanisms at minimum because, as we know, you may have a genetic predisposition for, but your lifestyle, your environment that you live in, stress, sleep, food choices, exercise, etc., pollution, exposure to chemicals, toxicity, physical, emotional, and chemical stress, all of that stuff is what ends up altering that gene expression. So we'll keep that at a minimum, but really want to focus on the key environmental lifestyle factors. So in the muscle insulin resistance group, this is going to be more of a high-fat diet, an inactive lifestyle, chronic inflammation, cellulitis, gingivitis, arthritis, right? Chronic low-level inflammation in the body, and or pollution. The beta cell dysfunction group is going to show more of a hyperglycemia, high blood sugars, high postprandial blood sugars, meaning post-meal, elevated fasting blood sugar in the morning when you do your yearly blood work and your fasting plasma glucose is elevated. You're going to be susceptible to viral infections, and you're going to have a lifestyle or a life that is filled with stress. The impaired incretin effect group is going to be poor diet, so obesogenic food environment, ultra-processed foods, low fiber, high sugar. You're going to have gut involvement. So these would be the people that have gut volatility, chronic constipation, diarrhea, leaky gut, gut dysbiosis. So gut volatility, a gut involvement here in the lifestyle factor and how it shows up in your day-to-day life. And also circadian shifts. So you're going to see, cravings, late night eating, waking up exhausted, trouble sleeping. You're going to see the circadian biology, the how your hormone production cycles day to day. You're going to see that show up in kind of how you feel throughout the day in terms of your sleep and wake cycles. And then the liver dysregulation, this is where you're going to have a high sugar fructose diet, which I did not have, poor sleep,
which you did have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Stress, absolutely. And a predisposition or the environmental, you're in the higher BMI category of the overweight or obese categories. So as we look at this, muscle insulin resistance, high-fat diet, inactivity, chronic inflammation, beta cell dysfunction, high blood sugars, toxicity, viral infection, stress, incretin effect, this third subgroup, poor diet, low fiber, high sugar, gut dysfunction, circadian biology, sleep-wake cycle issues, and then liver dysregulation, high sugar, fructose, poor sleep, stress, and obesity. So this is kind of the first, take stock of where you're at and see if some of these things kind of resonate with your recent labs in your day-to-day life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. And because when you're looking at something like an oral glucose tolerance test, looking at your CGM curves and things like that, there's a lot of potential confusing data. And we hear that a lot of times, hey, I'm wearing a CGM, but it's kind of weird. I'm getting some surprising results over here, or I thought, or even like, why didn't going low carb or going carnivore, why didn't that seem to move the needle for me as much as I thought? Or like my friends did it, or my family did it. They were just, the pounds were melting away, but it wasn't it wasn't happening for me, and I'm not really sure why. So oftentimes we can feel like, there's something wrong with us, or that, that we're just broken in some way because some method that seems to be very effective for somebody else isn't working for you at this time, or not working as well. And so when you start to see things that, like, hey, maybe that's just not the lever that's going to be as powerful for me, then I think that starts to be, really helpful in motivating in the process, because there are things that will be more helpful than others, and this can kind of like shine a light on some of that here.
100%. So if we're going to look at the subtypes, we can come back to it if we don't think we landed the plane on it. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about the subtypes in like a breakdown and recommendations from a very specific fasting recommendation, lifestyle tip, and nutrition.
Okay.
So we're gonna hit this from 3 different fronts. I almost wish we like rename these like the subgroups into the actual characteristics of the subgroup. So maybe we'll do that in the additional resources that we're going to make for this.
Okay.
As we start to break down the personalization and customization of this. So I think I'm kind of putting a placeholder here in real time, stream of consciousness here. But when we look at these 4 different groups, so again, muscle insulin resistance, muscles don't respond to insulin, blood sugar stays high, chronic fatigue, weight loss up and down, weight loss roller coaster, beta cell dysfunction. Your pancreas cells aren't making enough insulin despite normal muscle function. You've got the incretin effect. This is where the gut doesn't signal the pancreas correctly after a meal. So your GLP, GIPs, all of that process of post-meal blood sugar regulation isn't working properly. Mm-hmm. And then the liver glucose dysregulation, where the liver just keeps pumping out sugar when it shouldn't, ignoring the signals from insulin, right? So again, most weight loss clients, count your calories, track your macros, eat less, move more, lower carbs, et cetera, all the recommendations that are out there. Mm-hmm. How do we apply this to a fasting lifestyle with a fasting recommendation, a lifestyle tip, and a nutrition prioritization? So, muscle insulin resistance. Your time-restricted eating or early time-restricted feeding, so the earlier window, the earlier nutrition window, which we've changed our tune on over the last couple of years, you want to have shorter eating windows, especially with extended overnight fasting. So if you're doing 18-6, 24, or 1 meal a day, this is key for you if you fall into this group. Because this is going to maximize insulin sensitivity in the muscle tissue and allow that muscle mechanism, that mechanism that's underlying the issue, that's the underlying issue, it's going to give it the best opportunity for success. And we see this where most of the folks that we make this recommendation to as we start coaching them, move your window earlier in the day and boom, the scale starts moving, they're sleeping better, they start feeling better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is also the category where that early window is so important, because if the window starts to get later, especially if carbohydrates are involved, guess what? Your powerhouse for absorbing those glucose molecules is not doing the job. It's not soaking up that extra sugar, and so then you need more time. If you're a muscle insulin resistance person, you're gonna need more time for those blood sugars to regulate themselves before you get into your sleep cycle. And I'm gonna add one more thing too. This might be the category that responds best to a post-meal walk, a later in the day walk, or maybe it's going to be helpful for all of the buckets. But man, if you find yourself in this one, like I did, like you did, that's a big one, especially if carbohydrates come in later on in the day and you're looking for something to help, right?
Yeah, and I do want to say this. One of the things that we prioritize in our challenges and our resources is giving you the understanding of what's going on. So then when you're making the lifestyle changes, you're more motivated to do so. So a lot of our recommendations are going to work for most of these buckets. Mm-hmm. But if you've been stuck, or you're still feeling like, hey, I'm doing this, my labs aren't changing, or I'm still struggling with X, Y, or Z, this is where we want to drill down and kind of really get specific on where you're at. So a post-meal walk, to your point, it's great for everybody. But one of these subgroups with the impaired incretin effect, the post-meal walk is going to be one of the things you have to do. because of that dysregulated post-meal blood sugar, because of the dysfunction in the gut signaling the pancreas to produce the GLPs and the GIPs to increase your insulin sensitivity.
That's a good point. Even just knowing the reason why I have got to do this is like that's so powerful.
Should be motivating.
Yeah, because then it got me thinking about the liver insulin resistance group, and then you go, well, if the liver is just continuing to pump out sugar, even though I just brought some in from my meal, hopefully not too late in the day, but as the day gets on, then the problem just compounds from there. I absolutely need that post-meal walk, for as long as I can, compartmentalize the time, going into those evening hours to help just burn through some of that excess sugar.
So muscle insulin resistance. So early time restricted eating, 18-6, 24, OMAD can maximize your insulin sensitivity. Once a week, 30 to 36 hour fast, absolutely. The lifestyle tip here. Engage in resistance training 3 to 4 times a week because muscle tissue is the biggest sink for that blood sugar disposal.
Yeah, think large muscle groups as much as possible too.
Yep, large muscle groups, push-pull, upper body, lower body, full body workouts.
Yep.
Resistance training 3-4 times a week is a must. And then a nutrition idea. Again, this is one that can apply pretty much to everybody. But for you specifically, and this is why I do better on a carnivore, more protein-only diet, is prioritize higher protein, and you can add in fiber-rich meals as well to help boost post-meal muscle glucose uptake.
Love it.
Okay, the second group, beta cell dysfunction. Fasting recommendation. Avoid extended fasting. Use gentle, regular intermittent fasting windows, 16-8, 18-6, 24, which reduces overall secretory demand and beta cell burnout while keeping your post-meal blood sugar lower.
Wow. That's great. You know what it also is? It's also a reason why you need to be extra dialed in and intentional every time you go to break your fast too.
Yep.
Because especially if you're in a fat loss phase, because that means you're not using these extra just burn time hours all over the place. So you need to be very intentional with your nutrition so you can balance out the fasting time so that you can have a net fat burn if you're in a fat loss phase.
Yep. We'll give you some characteristics on the labs and things you'll see that will put you in this bucket as well. The lifestyle tip, manage stress, prioritize sleep. You're getting up at 5 a.m. because it's the only time you can get a workout in. You might be needing to move that workout time.
Right.
Because we need to be managing stress and prioritizing sleep. Because chronic stress and poor sleep both worsen beta cell function. This is why one of our pillars in coaching and our challenges is prioritize your sleep. The nutrition here for beta cell dysfunction, add omega-3 rich foods, fatty fish, salmon, sardines, walnuts to reduce inflammation and protect the health of your beta cells.
That's great.
Okay, group 4. Group 3, incretin, impaired incretin. Fasting recommendation. Pre-meal walking or gentle post-meal activity during your eating window, which improves your GLP-1 insulin sensitivity post-meal.
Okay.
Your lifestyle tip, mindful, unhurried eating, chew food thoroughly to assist gut hormone signaling. We say this to a lot of folks. If you just put a little intentionality into your nutrition window and slow the heck down, you're going to be doing your body a service. Because this is specifically in this case, remember, the underlying mechanism is that improper gut signaling. If you are someone that has gut volatility, nutrition idea, fermented foods, yogurts, kefirs, kimchi, sauerkrauts. We just talked about this on our last coaching call inside a group, which may support gut-derived hormone response and slows down digesting, plus slow digesting carbs, to reduce post-meal spikes. So if you have post-meal blood sugar like volatility, you're in this group. Walking, unhurried eating, slow down, chew your food, and include fermented foods in your eating window.
Yeah, it's all about taking care of the GI tract, taking care of the gut with each
Yep.
nutrition opportunity. Yeah.
So last one, liver glucose dysregulation. This is where we're going to see an absolute necessity for alternate day fasting, longer than 24-hour fasts, 1 to 2 times a week, hitting that 30-hour mark, 36-hour mark once a week, because this is what resets your liver's insulin resistance and reduces those morning highs. So this is the group that if you have dawn phenomenon or delayed elevated blood sugar in the morning, this might show up as you ate breakfast, but you're hungry like an hour later and you're just ravenous, or you're doing black coffee on an empty stomach and then you're just pigging out over lunch.
Because your liver continues to pump out sugar
Yep.
all day long. And then then you're feeling these spikes, these insulin and blood sugar waves. And then those are causing these cravings and hunger, more hunger than you should be feeling.
Yep. Lifestyle tip, here it is. Here's another overarching, right? Because there's overlap. Consistent sleep and regular meal schedule. Because that's going to help synchronize your circadian clocks and regulate liver glucose production. This is also one that if you're waking up in the middle of the night a lot, especially between the 1 to 3, 2 to 4 time and having trouble going back to sleep, that's liver every single time. So that's how it would show up in your day-to-day.
Wow.
Nutrition idea, nutrition focus on cruciferous veggies, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and healthy fats. These are going to support liver health and help curb excess glucose output from your liver.
Yeah, if those are the main bulk of the carbohydrates that you're bringing in, and then you have a nice good protein source next to it, then that means you're not feeding into the issue, which is the fact that your liver is basically overproducing and over outputting glucose even when it really shouldn't be. And that's also why those longer fasts are coming in handy for this bucket here, for the liver glucose dysregulation bucket, because you're needing extra time for that blood sugar to come down and for the insulin to come down, and then for them to stay at lower levels so that you can actually, feel better, see the blood sugar regulate and get within the goalpost, and then also see some movement on the scale too. Because for this bucket, which you and I found ourselves in as well, it can take longer to see movement on the scale because your liver's able to just store so much glycogen and continue to output it even after you're like, well, haven't I burned through my last meal or two? Well, maybe not, because you kind of have this slow drip. It's very creative at finding sources of more blood sugar to put out.
Yep. So when we're looking at, well, what do we do with this information? We know no one size doesn't fit all. A lot of the pillars that we coach on do work for most people. However, if we can always customize and personalize a little bit more, then we want to do so. So the amazing breakthrough that we have right now at our fingertips is that you can decode yourself at home. You can have a at-home glucose tolerance test and use the framework to track your post-meal blood sugar. And this is what we're going to be developing with some of the future resources that we come up with, and helping you interpret this. Because with 1 or 2 at-home tests, we can now leverage the modern tech and decode the glucose curves and determine which specific pathology, which group you fall into. And ultimately, then you're going to be able to put together your specific recommendations. So, big picture, Tommy, regardless of where you think you are right now, you might not be able to interpret it. That's fine. What are some of the overarching things? Earlier meals are better, right? Muscle resistance training, pre and post meal walks, prioritizing protein, non-starchy carbohydrates in your nutrition windows, slow down your eating, prioritize sleep, manage stress. All of those things will move the needle for most of us. So I don't want it to overwhelm everybody listening, be like, oh crap, now what do I do? Just keep hitting singles, right?
Keep hitting singles and keep doing what's doing to get the weight off quickly, rather than sitting with those extra pounds of fat, of overfilled fat stores. Because whichever bucket you find yourself in, your more overfilled fat cells are making the problem worse. So as we shrink those fat cells, guess what? The issues within each one of these buckets shrinks with those fat cells. So let's keep doing what we need to do to move the needle, to burn through the excess fat, and to continue hitting those consistent singles that you mentioned, Scott, so that we can keep hitting our fasting timers, so we can keep a focus on intentional nutrition when we go to break our fast, so that we can continually be shrinking down those issues and getting the blood sugar and the insulin under control. Because at the end of the day, the closer we are to a better body composition and a long-term healthy weight, we have much less to worry about as far as our insulin and our blood sugar levels, as well as our cravings and our food choices and things like that. Things start to get more intuitive and easier as the weight comes off. So let's keep doing the things that are working too.
So I want to be a little bit clearer. So there's a company called Diagnostics. GTT at-home oral glucose tolerance test. So you can do it with or without a CGM. The most common OGTT test, you're going to measure your fasting blood glucose via finger stick. You're going to ingest the 75 grams of carbohydrates. And I do this with the group of functional medicine providers that I consult and coach. We do a carbohydrate stimulated test and then measure insulin, right? But it's a lab. You got to spit in a tube, send it off 2 to 3 weeks, then you got to interpret it. You can literally do this at home. So you would use the I can't pronounce it.
Yeah.
Diagnostics.
Diagnostics. Yeah.
Digital diagnostics. They have a GGT at home. So you'd be able to do this with a finger stick. And then blood sugar is measured at intervals after you ingest the 75 grams of carbohydrates. Or you can do it with a CGM and use the same at-home test, do the finger sticks, submit it in, but you'll be able to actually see the curves of what your blood sugar is doing and help you identify kind of what group you fall into.
Wow. Powerful.
And in some of the resources we're going to create around this, you're going to see, what your routine labs will look like for the muscle insulin resistance group. Fasting insulin will be moderately elevated. Your HOMA-IR will be above 2. Your triglycerides will be up. And your fasting glucose might be slightly elevated, but the physical cues are going to be central obesity, high BMI, and higher blood pressure. Guess what I had?
Yep.
For the beta cell, you're going to see fasting insulin low. You're going to see C-peptide low or normal. You're going to see fasting glucose elevated, and you're going to see A1C trending upwards. The physical cues, you're more in a normal weight or modest obesity, so like the overweight group. But you're going to have reactive blood sugar after high carb meals. You're going to get that post-meal fatigue or that craving, the hunger, I can't stop eating type feeling. For the impaired incretin, you're going to have fasting insulin glucose is going to be often normal. But your A1C may go high to low every time you get it checked. And you're going to see post-meal 1 hour glucose is going to be big postprandial spikes. That's where we're talking about the GIPs, the GLPs, and the insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
So you're going to see persistent hunger post-meal, digestive symptoms, and unpredictable blood sugar at home if you're testing it.
Wow.
And then for the liver resistance, your fasting glucose consistently high, because you said, Tommy, the liver's just pumping out. This is where you'll see liver enzymes elevate, which was something that I saw on my labs. And then the first group, the muscle insulin resistance group, was the blood pressure elevation. So I had both of these things happening, and I couldn't figure out why.
Yep.
My triglycerides were slightly elevated, and my A1C was slightly elevated or rising. In my case, it was still pretty stable. However, disturbed sleep, family history of fatty liver, and central obesity. I used to powerlift. I look like a strong man in the off season. I had the belly, right? That's where my weight goes.
Yeah, it makes sense as far as the disturbed sleep too, because like you said, the liver's waking you up at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning. Hard to get back to sleep, especially because the liver tends to be pumping out blood sugar at that point, which it shouldn't be. So then you're seeing on your CGM overnight, why have my blood sugar been elevated overnight? Especially if I had an earlier meal or I didn't have that many carbohydrates or whatever the case may be. The liver can still find sources of blood sugar, unfortunately, that can then keep us awake, get us into a bad sleep cycle, and then on to the next day. And it's that disturbed sleep then leads to insulin resistance the next day and the next day. So that's where part of the trouble becomes more of like a snowball effect.
Yep. So as we wrap up, head to the show notes. You'll see the links for the overviews and kind of the categorizations and the identifiers, and it'll give you everything you need in terms of an overview. But the reality is that blood sugar, we know insulin is insulin resistance or metabolic dysfunction, which leads to metabolic syndrome, which then leads to cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. Insulin resistance or a dysfunctioned insulin response in these 4 subgroups, we know is related to 8 out of the top 10 all-cause mortality metrics in the US and in the world.
Yep.
So personalized blood sugar care now means recognizing that this cascade is not just one disease. It's not the pizza or the salad, but it's a spectrum of these core subtypes driven by distinct organ-level dysfunction, which allows us to help allow for targeted lifestyle, nutritional, and even some cases, medication strategies that deeply address each underlying cause for you as an individual and not just a, hey, I tried it, it didn't work for me.
Yeah. Powerful.
Incredibly powerful. This is why we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. But to Nick's point, it's front of mind. It's groundbreaking research. And the more we talk about it, the more momentum we'll get behind the movement, the more we can help more people. So if you're looking for additional guidance, head to the show notes, grab the link, reach out to us if you've got questions, info@thefastingforlife.com. Join one of our upcoming challenges. We're going to be adding this into the content and the training that we do. We're absolutely going to be putting into our coaching programs.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to encourage you that the singles move the needle for most. And if you're stuck and you're frustrated and you've been doing the work and it's not working, now we have some more customized things we can look at to help you get the results that you truly deserve. And that's what we want to do with everything we do, is focus with the begin, the end in mind. What's a sustainable lifestyle change? Fasting is incredibly powerful to help undo that insulin resistance. Make those decisions on a day-to-day basis around your activity and your food and your stress and your sleep. Make them that much easier so you can once and for all get off the dieting roller coaster and truly get the weight loss and health results that you truly deserve. So Tommy, heavy conversation today. Nerd out a little bit. We're going to be giving you some resources. Reach out to us if you've got questions. Join the upcoming challenge. We've got one left at the end of the year, right before Thanksgiving, right before the holiday monster kind of creeps up and gets you. And then you wake up and it's March of 2026. So join us November, the week before Thanksgiving. Excited to continue to build this out with you, sir. Thank you for the conversation, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.